I never thought my neighbor would get arrested over a maple tree and some delivery trucks, but that's exactly what happened last spring in our quiet subdivision outside Charlotte, North Carolina. My name is Ethan Morrison, and I run a small but growing furniture restoration business from my property on Willow Creek Drive. When I bought the house 3 years ago, the real estate agent mentioned the Homeowners Association in passing, but assured me it was one of those laid-back organizations that mostly just maintained the common areas and organized the occasional block party. She failed to mention Patricia Winters, our HOA president, who treated the neighborhood bylaws like they were carved into stone tablets and handed down from above. Patricia was 52 years old, worked as a dentist at a successful practice in downtown Charlotte, and had shoulder-length blonde hair that she kept perfectly styled at all times. She drove a white Mercedes SUV with vanity plates that read, "Smile for You," and wore athletic leisure, where even though I never once saw her exercise. Her husband, Greg, was a mild-mannered accountant who mostly kept his head down and nodded along whenever Patricia launched into one of her speeches about property values and neighborhood standards. The problem started in March, when my business really took off. I had been refinishing furniture as a side hustle for years, but after a local interior designer featured my work on her Instagram page, orders started flooding in faster than I could handle. I converted my detached garage into a proper workshop and hired 2 part-time employees to help with the workload. Everything was going great until the delivery trucks started showing up more frequently. My property sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, and the delivery drivers had always taken the same route through the neighborhood to reach my house. They would turn off the main road onto Willow Creek Drive, follow it for about half a mile past maybe 20 houses, and then loop around the cul-de-sac to drop off their loads of raw furniture pieces or pick up my finished products. The trucks weren't massive 18-wheelers or anything like that, just standard box trucks, the kind you see making deliveries all over the city every single day. But Patricia had other ideas about what was acceptable in her perfect little kingdom. The first sign of trouble came on a Tuesday morning in late March. I was in my workshop sanding down an antique dresser when my phone rang. The caller ID showed it was Derek, one of my regular delivery drivers from the shipping company I used most often. "Hey, Ethan, we've got a problem," Derek said, and I could hear the frustration in his voice. "There's some lady blocking the street with her car. She's saying I can't come through." I set down my sandpaper and walked outside, phone still pressed to my ear. "What do you mean blocking the street?" "She's got her SUV parked sideways across both lanes. I'm sitting here with about 15 pieces you ordered, and she's refusing to move unless I turn around and leave." I felt my jaw clench. "I'll be right there." I hopped in my truck and drove down Willow Creek Drive until I spotted Derek's box truck stopped in the middle of the road. Sure enough, Patricia's white Mercedes was parked perpendicular across both lanes, completely blocking any traffic from passing. She stood next to her vehicle with her arms crossed, looking absolutely triumphant. I parked on the shoulder and walked up to her. "Patricia, what are you doing?" She turned to me with that particular expression she always wore when she thought she was right about something, which was pretty much all the time. "Ethan, we need to talk about these commercial vehicles constantly driving through our residential neighborhood." "That's a delivery truck bringing materials for my business," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "It comes through here maybe 3 or 4 times a week." "Exactly," Patricia said. 3 or 4 times a week. Do you know what that does to our roads? Do you know how it affects our property values when people see commercial trucks constantly rumbling through here?" "It's a box truck, Patricia. The mail truck is bigger than that thing. The mail truck provides a service to everyone in the neighborhood, she said primly. Your business only benefits you, and the rest of us have to suffer the consequences. Derek had climbed out of his truck and was standing there looking bewildered by the entire situation. A couple of other neighbors had come out of their houses to see what the commotion was about. I noticed Bill Henderson from 2 doors down shaking his head and going back inside, clearly not wanting to get involved in HOA drama. Patricia, you can't just block a public street, I said. This is a private road maintained by the HOA, she countered immediately. And as president, I have every right to regulate what kind of traffic comes through here. Section 8. Paragraph 3 of the bylaws clearly states that commercial activity that negatively impacts the neighborhood can be restricted by majority vote of the board. There hasn't been any vote, I said. There will be, Patricia replied. I'm calling an emergency board meeting for this Friday. Until then, I'm exercising my authority to prevent further damage to our roads. This was insane. I looked at Derek, who just shrugged helplessly. A few cars had started to back up behind his truck, neighbors trying to leave for work who were now trapped by this ridiculous standoff. You're blocking traffic, I pointed out. People are trying to get to work. Then tell your delivery driver to back up and leave and traffic will flow normally, Patricia said. I took a deep breath, counted to 5 in my head and tried a different approach. Look, I have customers waiting for their furniture. I have a business to run. This delivery needs to happen today. Then, perhaps you should have thought about that before you decided to run a commercial operation in a residential neighborhood without proper consideration for your neighbors, Patricia said. I work from home, Patricia. Lots of people work from home. That's perfectly legal and allowed under our HOA bylaws. Working from home on a computer is one thing, she said. Running a furniture operation with constant truck traffic is another. The board will make a determination on Friday, and until then, no commercial vehicles will be using our streets as a thoroughfare for your business. This is ridiculous, I said, my patience finally running out. Move your car, Patricia. No. We stood there staring at each other for a long moment. More cars had backed up now, and I could see Sandra Martinez from across the street recording the whole thing on her phone from her front porch. Patricia noticed her too and actually seemed to straighten up a bit, like she was performing for the camera. Finally, I turned to Derek. I'm sorry about this. Can you take the delivery to the main entrance of the neighborhood? I'll meet you there with my truck and we can transfer everything. Derek looked relieved to have an exit strategy. Yeah, that works. See you in 10. He backed his truck up carefully, executing a 3-point turn in the middle of the street and drove away. Patricia looked satisfied with herself as she climbed back into her Mercedes and moved it back into the proper lane. The backed-up cars started flowing again, and everyone went about their day like nothing had happened, except something had happened. Patricia had just declared war on my business, and I had a sinking feeling this was only the beginning. The emergency board meeting on Friday was held at the community clubhouse, a small building near the neighborhood pool that mostly sat empty except for monthly meetings and the occasional birthday party rental. I showed up 15 minutes early and found Patricia already there, along with the other 2 board members. Robert Chen, a retired engineer who mostly just wanted a quiet life and seemed perpetually exhausted by Patricia's drama, and Vanessa Hughes, a real estate agent who generally sided with Patricia on most issues because she was genuinely concerned about property values. About 15 other residents trickled in over the next 10 minutes, some of them my direct neighbors who had been inconvenienced by Patricia's street blocking stunt, others just curious about the drama. My wife Alina stayed home with our kids, but she had made me promise to stay calm and not lose my temper no matter how unreasonable things got. Patricia called the meeting to order at exactly 7 o'clock. She had printed out packets for everyone, complete with photos she had apparently been taking of delivery trucks coming to my house over the past few months. I hadn't even known she was documenting this. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," Patricia began, standing at the front of the room like she was addressing a corporate board meeting instead of a neighborhood gathering. "We're here tonight to discuss a serious issue that's been affecting our community. Ethan Morrison has been operating a commercial furniture business from his property, and the increased truck traffic is damaging our roads, decreasing our property values, and fundamentally changing the character of our neighborhood." I raised my hand. "Patricia, I'd like to respond to that." She gave me a tight smile. "You'll have your chance to speak. Let me finish presenting the facts first." She proceeded to spend the next 20 minutes going through her packet, showing photos of trucks at various angles on our street, referencing sections of the HOA bylaws about commercial activity, and even presenting a printout of a study about how commercial traffic affects residential property values. It was simultaneously impressive and completely absurd how much effort she had put into this. When she finally finished, she gestured to me. "Ethan, you may now present your side." I stood up, very aware that I hadn't prepared any fancy presentation or packet. My side is pretty simple. I run a furniture restoration business from my home. I've been doing this for 3 years, but it's only recently become successful enough to require regular deliveries. The trucks come maybe 3 or 4 times a week. They drop off raw materials or pick up finished pieces, and they're gone within 10 minutes. They're not any bigger than a moving truck, and they're certainly not damaging the roads any more than regular traffic does. 3 or 4 times a week adds up to over 200 truck visits per year, Patricia interjected. And there are 40 houses in this neighborhood, which means hundreds of cars coming and going every single day, I countered. My delivery trucks are a tiny fraction of the total traffic on these streets. But those are residential vehicles, Patricia said. Your trucks are commercial. There's a difference. What difference? I asked. They have the same number of wheels, similar weight, similar size. What magical property makes a delivery truck worse than an SUV? Vanessa spoke up. The perception, Ethan. When buyers are looking at houses, they want to see a residential neighborhood, not trucks constantly coming and going for someone's business. Constantly is an exaggeration, I said. And I have rights as a homeowner too. I'm not running a factory. I'm not causing noise complaints. I'm not doing anything that actually harms anyone. I'm just trying to make a living. Robert cleared his throat. Has anyone actually complained about noise or disruption besides the truck traffic? Patricia shot him a look. The truck traffic is the disruption, Robert. I'm just saying, if Ethan was causing other problems, we would have heard about them by now, Robert said mildly. He's been doing this for 3 years. The only thing that's changed is the frequency of deliveries. Exactly my point, Patricia said. It's escalating. Today it's 4 trucks a week. Next year it could be 4 trucks a day. We need to establish clear boundaries now before this gets out of control. I'm not planning to expand to 4 trucks a day, I said. My business has reached a pretty stable level. If anything, I'm thinking about renting a small commercial space eventually for the workshop itself, which would actually reduce the traffic to my house. Eventually, Patricia repeated, but not now. And in the meantime, we all have to deal with your commercial operation in our backyard. Bill Henderson, my neighbor from 2 doors down, raised his hand. I live right next to Ethan, and I've never had a problem with his business. The trucks are quiet, they don't block the street, and honestly, I think it's great that he's running a successful small business. Isn't that the American dream? The American dream doesn't include bulldozing over your neighbor's property rights, Patricia snapped. No one's bulldozing anything, Bill said. You're the one who blocked a public street earlier this week. That seems like more of an overreach than anything Ethan's done. A few people murmured in agreement, and I saw Patricia's face flush slightly. She didn't like losing control of the narrative. That was a temporary measure to prevent further road damage until this meeting could take place, she said. And for the record, our streets are private roads maintained by HOA dues. I have every right to regulate their use. Actually, I looked into that, said Tom Peterson, an attorney who lived on the other side of the neighborhood. These streets are technically private, but they're also classified as common areas under our HOA bylaws, which means all homeowners have equal access rights. You can't unilaterally restrict someone's access without a proper vote and legitimate grounds. Patricia's flush deepened. That's exactly why we're having a vote tonight. I'm proposing a new rule limiting commercial vehicle traffic on our streets. Delivery trucks for residential purposes would still be allowed, but regular commercial deliveries exceeding twice per week would require special permission from the board. That's specifically targeting Ethan, Bill said. You can't make a rule that only affects one person. It's not targeting anyone, Patricia insisted. It's a reasonable regulation that would apply to any resident who wanted to run a commercial operation from their home. But Ethan's the only one doing that, Bill pointed out. Which is exactly why we need this rule, Patricia said, her voice rising slightly. Before others get the same idea and we end up with trucks coming and going all day long. The meeting devolved into chaos for a few minutes, with multiple people trying to talk at once. Robert finally called for order and suggested they take a formal vote on Patricia's proposed rule. Out of the 15 residents present besides myself and the board members, only 5 voted in favor of the restriction. The rest either voted against it or abstained, and the motion failed. Patricia looked furious, but she maintained her composure. Fine. The membership has spoken for now, but I want everyone here to remember this moment when our property values decline and our roads are torn up by constant commercial traffic. That's not going to happen, I said, trying to end things on a less confrontational note. I promise to be mindful of the deliveries and to let you know if anything changes with my business that might affect the neighborhood. Your promises mean very little to me, Patricia said coldly. This meeting is adjourned. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, on a Thursday morning in early April, I got another call from Derek. This time, he sounded even more frustrated than before. Ethan, you're not going to believe this. That lady is out here again, but this time she's not just blocking the street with her car. She's planted a tree right in the middle of the road. What? I said, certain I must have misheard him. A tree. Like a full-sized maple tree in a huge pot. It's got to weigh several hundred pounds. She's got it sitting right in the middle of the cul-de-sac. There's no way I can get around it. I didn't even bother responding. I just grabbed my keys and drove down to the cul-de-sac, where I found exactly what Derek had described. Patricia had somehow acquired a massive potted maple tree, easily 10 feet tall with a root ball that must have weighed 300 pounds or more. It sat directly in the center of the cul-de-sac, positioned perfectly to prevent any large vehicle from executing the turn they needed to make deliveries to my house. Patricia was standing next to it, and this time she had brought Greg along. He looked miserable standing there with his hands in his pockets while his wife blocked traffic again. Patricia, what the hell is this? I demanded. Language, she said primly. This is a maple tree. I'm beautifying our neighborhood. You're blocking the street. I'm not blocking anything. There's plenty of room for cars to get around. See?" She gestured to where her Mercedes was easily parked on the side. "Your truck fits. Other cars fit. It's only the commercial trucks that can't maneuver around it. Because you positioned it specifically to block them," I said. "I positioned it where I thought it would look nicest," Patricia said innocently. "If commercial trucks can't navigate around it, that's really just evidence that they're too large for our residential streets." "This is insane," I said. "You can't just put a tree in the middle of the road." "Why not? The cul-de-sac is common area property. Any resident can use common areas." "Not to block traffic," I said. "I'm not blocking traffic. I'm creating a landscaping feature. I actually think we should plant it permanently. It would really enhance the aesthetic of this area." I looked at Greg. "Are you really going to stand there and let her do this?" Greg shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. After 18 years of marriage to Patricia, he had apparently learned that resistance was futile. Derek had climbed out of his truck again. "Man, what do you want me to do?" "I can't deliver with that thing there." I pulled out my phone. "I'm calling the police." "Go ahead," Patricia said, not looking concerned at all. "They'll tell you it's a civil matter for the HOA to resolve. And since the HOA already voted against your commercial traffic, I think I'm well within my rights." "The HOA voted against your proposed restriction," I corrected. "They didn't vote to ban delivery trucks." "Potato, potato," Patricia said with a dismissive wave. I dialed 911, explained the situation, and was told that an officer would come out to assess the situation. While we waited, more neighbors started emerging from their houses. This was becoming a regular show, apparently. Bill Henderson came over, took one look at the tree, and started laughing. "Patricia, you've lost your mind." "I'm protecting our neighborhood," she said. "You're harassing Ethan," Bill said. "This is ridiculous." "You're entitled to your opinion," Patricia replied. Sandra Martinez, who had recorded the last incident, was filming again. "Patricia, do you think maybe you're taking this a little too far? When the rest of you see your home values dropping, you'll thank me," Patricia said. Officer James Rodriguez arrived about 20 minutes later. He was a veteran cop in his early 40s who looked like he had seen everything and was no longer surprised by anything. He surveyed the scene, the massive tree, the blocked delivery truck, and Patricia standing there with her arms crossed looking defiant. "Madam, I understand you placed this tree here," Officer Rodriguez asked Patricia. "I'm beautifying the common areas of our neighborhood," Patricia said. "It's perfectly within my rights as a homeowner and HOA president." "It's blocking traffic," Officer Rodriguez observed. "It's blocking commercial vehicles that are too large for residential streets," Patricia clarified. "Regular cars can navigate around it just fine." Officer Rodriguez walked around the tree, examining the situation from different angles. He looked at Derek's truck, measured the space with his eyes, and came back to Patricia. "Madam, this is blocking the public right-of-way," he said. "It's a private street," Patricia countered immediately. "Private streets still have to maintain public access for emergency vehicles and legitimate traffic," Officer Rodriguez said patiently. "What happens if a fire truck needs to come down here?" "Fire trucks can get around it," Patricia said, though she sounded less confident now. "I don't think they can," Officer Rodriguez said. "And neither can this delivery truck, which has legitimate business making deliveries to Mr. Morrison's residence. I'm going to have to ask you to remove the tree." "Absolutely not," Patricia said. "This is my property and I'm exercising my rights as an HOA member." "The tree itself is your property," Officer Rodriguez agreed, "but you can't place your property in a location that blocks traffic. That's illegal." "I want to speak to your supervisor," Patricia demanded. "You're welcome to file a complaint," Officer Rodriguez said. "But right now, you need to move this tree." "I refuse," Patricia said, and I saw Greg close his eyes like he knew what was coming next. "Madam, if you don't move the tree, I'm going to have to cite you for obstruction," Officer Rodriguez said. "Fine, cite me." "I'll pay the ticket and put the tree right back," Patricia said. Officer Rodriguez sighed. "It doesn't work that way. If you obstruct traffic after being ordered to clear the right-of-way, that's not just a civil infraction. That can be criminal obstruction, which is a misdemeanor." That got Patricia's attention. "You can't arrest me for planting a tree." "I can arrest you for refusing a lawful order to clear a traffic obstruction," Officer Rodriguez said. "Now, I really don't want to do that. I'm sure we can resolve this reasonably. Just move the tree to the side of the cul-de-sac, and everyone can go about their day." Patricia's jaw set in that stubborn way I had come to recognize. "No, this is harassment of a law-abiding homeowner. That man is running an illegal commercial operation and you're taking his side." "His operation isn't illegal," Officer Rodriguez said. "I already checked. He has all the proper business licenses and permits. He's allowed to work from home and he's allowed to receive deliveries. You, on the other hand, are blocking traffic, which is illegal. Last chance, madam. Move the tree." "No." The whole street seemed to hold its breath. Officer Rodriguez looked tired, like this was not how he wanted his day to go. He pulled out his handcuffs. "Patricia Winters, you're under arrest for obstruction of traffic and refusing a lawful order. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Patricia's eyes went wide. "You can't be serious." "I'm very serious, madam. Please turn around and place your hands behind your back." "This is outrageous," Patricia sputtered, but she didn't move. "Greg, call our attorney." Greg was fumbling with his phone, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else on earth. "Madam, I need you to comply," Officer Rodriguez said firmly. Patricia still didn't move, so Officer Rodriguez stepped forward and gently but firmly turned her around and placed the handcuffs on her wrists. The sound of them clicking shut seemed impossibly loud in the quiet cul-de-sac. "I want your badge number," Patricia demanded as Officer Rodriguez led her toward his patrol car. "This is police brutality. I'm being arrested for beautifying my neighborhood." "You're being arrested for obstruction," Officer Rodriguez corrected. "My badge number is 4517, and you're welcome to file any complaint you'd like once you're processed." He helped Patricia into the back of his patrol car, and I watched in amazement as my HOA president was driven away in handcuffs, still protesting loudly even though no one could hear her anymore through the closed car door. Greg stood there looking shell-shocked. Sandra Martinez was still filming everything. Bill Henderson was trying not to laugh. Derek looked confused but relieved. "So can I move the tree?" Derek asked. Greg nodded weakly. "I'll help you." It took 4 of us to lift the massive potted tree and move it to the side of the cul-de-sac, where it actually did look kind of nice. Derek was finally able to make his delivery, and I helped him unload the furniture pieces into my workshop. The whole neighborhood was buzzing with gossip for the rest of the day. Patricia made bail that evening and came home furious. Over the next few days, she sent multiple emails to the HOA membership claiming she had been victimized by police overreach and that I had somehow orchestrated the whole thing. Most people ignored her. A few sympathized but gently suggested maybe she should have just moved the tree. The court date was set for 3 weeks later. Patricia hired an expensive attorney and made it clear she was going to fight the charges. She seemed to think she could argue her way out of it, convince a judge that she had been exercising her legitimate rights as an HOA president, and that Officer Rodriguez had overstepped his authority. I didn't want to go to court, but the prosecutor's office called and asked me to testify as a witness. I agreed, though I dreaded the whole thing. This had spiraled so far beyond what I ever imagined when I first started getting delivery trucks to my house. The courthouse in Charlotte was busy on the morning of Patricia's hearing. Alina came with me for moral support, and we sat in the gallery while other cases were heard first. When Patricia's case was finally called, she walked up to the defendant's table with her attorney, a sharp-looking woman in a navy suit who had apparently specialized in civil rights cases. The prosecutor, a tired-looking man named Marcus Webb, presented the state's case first. He called Officer Rodriguez to the stand, and the officer calmly described responding to a call about a traffic obstruction, finding a large tree blocking the cul-de-sac, and asking Patricia multiple times to move it before finally arresting her when she refused. Patricia's attorney, whose name was Jennifer Klein, cross-examined Rodriguez aggressively. She asked about HOA rights to maintain common areas, whether he had verified the ownership status of the street, and whether he had considered alternatives to arrest. Officer Rodriguez remained calm throughout. "Madam, I gave the defendant multiple opportunities to comply. She explicitly refused. At that point, I had no choice but to enforce the law. But isn't it true that HOA presidents have broad authority to manage common areas in their communities?" Klein asked. "They have authority to manage them, not to obstruct them," Rodriguez replied. "There's a difference." Next, I was called to testify. I explained my business, the delivery schedule, Patricia's previous attempts to block my trucks, and the events leading up to her arrest. Klein tried to paint me as someone running an inappropriate commercial operation in a residential area, but I stuck to the facts. My business was legal, licensed, and permitted. The trucks were normal delivery vehicles, not industrial equipment, and I had never violated any actual HOA rules. Then Patricia took the stand herself, and that's when things got really interesting. "Mrs. Winters, can you explain why you placed the tree in the cul-de-sac?" her attorney asked. "I was trying to beautify our neighborhood and protect our property values," Patricia said. "Mr. Morrison's commercial trucks were damaging our roads and creating an industrial atmosphere in what's supposed to be a quiet residential community. As HOA president, it's my responsibility to protect the interests of all residents." "And did you believe you had the authority to place the tree there?" "Absolutely. The cul-de-sac is common area property. Any homeowner can use common areas for reasonable purposes. I was creating a landscaping feature that would benefit everyone. Even if it blocked Mr. Morrison's delivery trucks, the trucks were the problem," Patricia said. "Normal vehicles could get around the tree just fine. It was only the oversized commercial trucks that couldn't fit. In my view, that proved my point that those trucks were too large for our neighborhood." It was a clever argument, I had to admit. Patricia was trying to frame this as an HOA governance issue rather than a criminal obstruction case. But then Marcus Webb stood up for cross-examination, and I could see he had been waiting for this moment. "Mrs. Winters, you stated that you placed the tree to beautify the neighborhood, correct?" "Yes," Patricia said, "and that any homeowner can use common areas for reasonable purposes." "That's correct. Did you get approval from the HOA board before placing a 300-pound tree in the middle of a street?" Patricia hesitated. "I'm the president. I have discretion to make day-to-day decisions about common area maintenance." "That's not what I asked." "Did you get board approval?" "No, but it wasn't necessary." Webb pulled out a document. "I have here a copy of your HOA bylaws. Section 12, Paragraph 7 states that any modification to common areas exceeding $500 in value requires board approval." Would you agree that a 10-foot maple tree in a commercial-grade planter probably exceeds $500? The price isn't really the point, Patricia said. Answer the question, please. Did the tree cost more than $500? Yes, Patricia admitted reluctantly. So you violated your own HOA bylaws by placing it without board approval. I was acting in an emergency situation to prevent further damage to our roads, Patricia said. An emergency that lasted how long? Days? Weeks? You never called an emergency board meeting to approve your actions. Patricia's face was getting red again. The other board members were aware of the situation. Being aware and giving approval are different things, Mrs. Winters. Did you get approval? No, thank you. Now, Officer Rodriguez testified that he ordered you multiple times to move the tree and you refused. Is that accurate? He didn't understand the situation, Patricia said. I tried to explain that I had authority as HOA president, but you did refuse his order. I didn't think he had the right to order me to do anything. And when he explained that you were obstructing traffic and that it was illegal, I disagreed with his interpretation. So you're not a police officer, you're not an attorney, but you decided your interpretation of the law was correct and his was wrong. I was standing up for my rights, Patricia said, by breaking the law. I wasn't breaking any law, Patricia insisted. Webb looked at the judge. Your Honor, I think the defendant has made the state's case for us. She admits to placing an unauthorized obstruction in a public thoroughfare. She admits to refusing multiple lawful orders to remove it. And she admits she believed her personal interpretation of the law superseded that of a police officer. This is textbook obstruction. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Margaret Foster, nodded slowly. I'm inclined to agree, Mr. Webb. Mrs. Klein, does your client wish to add anything? Klein looked frustrated but stood up. Your Honor, my client genuinely believed she was acting within her authority as an HOA president. There was no criminal intent here. Ignorance of the law is not a defense, Judge Foster said. And I'm not convinced Mrs. Winters was ignorant. I think she knew exactly what she was doing. She wanted to stop Mr. Morrison's delivery trucks, and when she couldn't do it through proper HOA channels, she took matters into her own hands. That's not how our society functions, Mrs. Winters. Patricia started to speak, but Klein put a hand on her arm to stop her. I'm finding you guilty of obstruction, Judge Foster continued. This is a misdemeanor, but it's a serious one. You actively interfered with legitimate traffic. You refused lawful orders from law enforcement, and you showed no remorse or recognition that your actions were inappropriate. I'm sentencing you to 30 days in jail, suspended, meaning you won't serve time unless you violate the conditions of your probation. You'll be on probation for 1 year, during which time you are prohibited from interfering with Mr. Morrison's business operations in any way. You will also pay a fine of $1,000 and perform 80 hours of community service. Do you understand? Patricia looked like she had been slapped. Your Honor, I'm a dentist. I have patients who depend on me. I can't spend time doing community service. You'll find the time, Judge Foster said. And frankly, Mrs. Winters, you should consider yourself fortunate. If you had shown even a hint of understanding that your actions were wrong, I might have been more lenient. But your testimony made it clear you still believe you were in the right, which concerns me greatly. This sentence is meant to impress upon you that you are not above the law, regardless of your position in your HOA. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down and it was over. Patricia sat there in shock while Klein gathered her papers and tried to console her. Elena squeezed my hand and we quietly left the courtroom. I thought that would finally be the end of it. Patricia would serve her probation, do her community service, and hopefully leave me alone. But the story took one more turn that I never saw coming. About a week after the court case, I got a call from a reporter at the Charlotte Observer. Her name was Jessica Harper, and she explained that she had heard about Patricia's arrest through the police blotter and thought it sounded like an interesting human interest story. "I'd love to talk to you about what happened," Jessica said. "It sounds like a pretty extreme HOA dispute." I was hesitant. I don't really want to make this into a bigger thing than it already is. "I understand," Jessica said, "but I think there's a larger story here about HOA overreach and how neighborhood governance can sometimes go off the rails. I promise to be fair to everyone involved." Against my better judgment, I agreed to talk to her. We met for coffee, and I explained the whole situation from start to finish. Jessica was a good interviewer, asking probing questions but never putting words in my mouth. She also interviewed several of my neighbors, Patricia herself, and even talked to some HOA governance experts to provide context. The article came out 2 weeks later under the headline "HOA President Arrested After Blocking Delivery Trucks with Tree." It was actually a balanced piece, presenting both my perspective and Patricia's, but the basic facts made Patricia look pretty bad. You can't spin blocking traffic and getting arrested into a sympathetic story, no matter how good the reporter is. The article got picked up by a local news station, then by a regional news network, and suddenly Patricia's tree blocking incident was a viral story. People loved it. It had all the elements of a perfect internet outrage tale. HOA overreach, a small business owner just trying to make a living, a literal tree blocking a street, and an arrest caught on video thanks to Sandra Martinez's phone footage. Patricia became a meme. People made jokes about her on social media. Someone created a fake Twitter account called Patricia the Tree Planter that posted satirical content about blocking traffic with increasingly absurd objects. A local comedy radio show did a whole segment about it. And that's when Patricia's professional life started to unravel. The North Carolina State Board of Dental Examiners has ethics requirements for licensed dentists. You have to maintain good character. You can't be convicted of crimes involving moral turpitude, and you're expected to uphold professional standards both in and out of the office. Patricia's obstruction conviction and the viral publicity around it triggered a review of her license. I found out about this from Bill Henderson, who heard it from his wife, who was friends with someone who worked at Patricia's dental practice. Apparently, the board had sent Patricia a letter informing her that they were investigating whether her criminal conviction and behavior warranted disciplinary action. Patricia tried to fight it. She hired another attorney to represent her before the board, arguing that her conviction was minor, that it had nothing to do with her ability to practice dentistry, and that she was being unfairly punished for a momentary lapse in judgment. But the board looked at the full picture. The conviction itself, the viral publicity that reflected poorly on the dental profession, Patricia's complete lack of remorse, and her continued insistence that she had been in the right. They also considered complaints from some of her patients who had seen the news stories and felt uncomfortable being treated by someone who had become known for such erratic behavior. The board's decision came down 3 months after Patricia's criminal sentencing. They suspended her dental license for 6 months and placed her on probationary status for 2 years after that. During the suspension, she couldn't practice dentistry at all. After the suspension ended, any future ethical violations would result in permanent revocation. For Patricia, who had built her entire identity around being Dr. Patricia Winters, successful dentist and community leader, this was devastating. Her practice couldn't afford to keep her on staff for 6 months without her being able to see patients, so she was forced to leave. The practice didn't fire her exactly, but they restructured and brought in another dentist to take over her patient load. And when Patricia's suspension ended, there wasn't really a place for her anymore. She tried to start her own practice, but the combination of the probationary status, the viral notoriety, and the gap in her practice history made it nearly impossible. Patients didn't want to see the tree lady dentist. Insurance companies were hesitant to credential her. Suppliers treated her application cautiously. Greg, who had been working as an accountant at a mid-sized firm for 20 years, found himself in an awkward position. His wife's notoriety was affecting his professional reputation too. Clients would make jokes about making sure their trees weren't blocking anything. Colleagues would ask him pointed questions about HOA drama. Eventually, the stress of it all led Greg to request a transfer to the firm's office in Raleigh, about 2 hours away. Patricia and Greg put their house up for sale. The real estate market was decent, but the house sat for months longer than expected. Potential buyers would Google the address, find all the stories about the tree incident, and decide they didn't want to live in that neighborhood. Vanessa Hughes, who was listing the house, had to work extra hard to overcome the negative publicity. When they finally sold, it was for $15,000 less than the comparable homes in the area, the exact opposite of Patricia's constant worrying about property values declining because of my business. The irony was not lost on anyone. Through all of this, my furniture restoration business continued to thrive. The viral publicity actually helped me, bringing attention to my work and resulting in dozens of new orders from people who wanted to support the small business owner who had been harassed by his HOA. I hired 2 more employees and finally did rent that commercial workshop space I had mentioned at the HOA meeting, which meant the delivery trucks stopped coming to the neighborhood altogether. The HOA held elections for a new board, and Patricia didn't run for re-election. Robert Chen took over as president, and his first official act was to send me a letter apologizing for the entire situation and confirming that my business deliveries had always been within HOA guidelines. The letter went on to establish clearer rules about what constituted appropriate use of common areas, including an explicit prohibition on placing unauthorized objects in streets or driveways. Patricia and Greg moved to Raleigh in September. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that Patricia eventually found part-time work at a dental clinic that specialized in serving low-income patients, a far cry from her successful private practice in Charlotte. Greg was doing fine at his new office, apparently relieved to be away from the constant drama. The potted maple tree, which had caused so much trouble, was actually planted permanently on the side of the cul-de-sac where we had moved it. It became a weird little memorial to the whole incident, and every time I drove past it, I couldn't help but shake my head at the absurdity of everything that had happened. Sandra Martinez put together a neighborhood newsletter article about the whole saga, titled The Great Tree War of Willow Creek Drive. She interviewed everyone involved and created a timeline of events that was both hilarious and slightly horrifying to read. The newsletter became collector's item among HOA horror story enthusiasts online. One evening in early October, about 6 months after Patricia's arrest, I was sitting on my front porch with Alina, watching our kids play in the yard. Bill Henderson walked over with a couple of beers and settled into one of our chairs. "You know what the craziest part of all this is?" he said, handing me a beer. "What's that?" I asked. "Your delivery trucks were never actually a problem, like at all. I've lived on this street for 12 years, and I barely even noticed them. If Patricia had just left you alone, none of this would have happened. She'd still have her practice. She'd still be living 2 doors down, and she'd still be bossing everyone around at HOA meetings. Some people just can't help themselves, Alina said. They see something they think is wrong, and they have to fix it, even when it doesn't need fixing. And even when fixing it breaks everything else, Bill added. Did you hear the dental board released a public statement about her case? They're using it as an example in their ethics training now. Don't do what Patricia Winters did. I had heard that, actually. Someone had emailed me a link to the training materials, which had been posted online. There was an entire case study about how professional licensure can be affected by personal conduct, using Patricia's tree blocking incident as the cautionary tale. It was surreal seeing my HOA drama turned into educational content for dental students. I almost feel bad for her, I said, and I meant it. I never wanted any of this to happen. I just wanted to run my business and be left alone. Don't feel too bad, Bill said. She made her choices. She could have moved the tree when the cop asked her to. She could have accepted the vote at the HOA meeting. Hell, she could have just talked to you like a normal person instead of immediately going to street-blocking tactics. Every step of the way, she had opportunities to de-escalate, and every time she chose to escalate instead. He was right, of course. Patricia had been given so many chances to back down, and she had refused every single one of them. It was like she couldn't conceive of a world where she wasn't right, where her judgment wasn't the final word on what was acceptable in the neighborhood. I wonder if she learned anything from all this, Alina mused. Based on what I heard from my wife, who talked to someone who knows Patricia in Raleigh, I don't think so, Bill said. Apparently she's already gotten into a dispute with her new HOA about where people can park their cars. Some things never change. We sat there in comfortable silence for a while, drinking our beers and watching the sun set over Willow Creek Drive. The maple tree was visible from my porch, its leaves just starting to turn autumn colors. Despite everything, it really did look nice there. The next few months passed quietly. My business continued to do well in the commercial space. Alina had suggested I write a book about the whole experience, but I couldn't imagine who would want to read an entire book about HOA drama and tree-based obstruction. Life returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after becoming a minor internet celebrity for being harassed by your HOA president. I did hear from Patricia one more time. It was December, almost 9 months after her arrest. I got an email from an address I didn't recognize, but the name in the signature was Patricia Winters. The email was brief. Mr. Morrison, I wanted to reach out and offer my apologies for the situation last spring. Upon reflection, and with the benefit of time and distance, I can see that my actions were inappropriate and caused unnecessary hardship for you and your family. I was wrong to try to block your delivery trucks, and I was wrong to refuse Officer Rodriguez's orders. I let my concerns about the neighborhood override my better judgment, and I paid a heavy price for that mistake. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me, and I hope your business continues to be successful. Sincerely, Patricia Winters. I read the email 3 times, trying to figure out if it was genuine or if she was going through the motions because her attorney had advised her to make amends for her probation. Eventually, I decided it didn't really matter. An apology was an apology, and holding on to anger wasn't going to help anyone. I wrote back. Patricia, thank you for reaching out. I accept your apology. I hope things are going better for you in Raleigh, and I wish you and Greg all the best. Take care, Ethan. She never responded, and I never heard from her again. Sometimes I wonder if she really did learn something from the whole experience, or if she just learned to be more careful about how she exercised her need for control. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. The legal aftermath continued for a while longer. Patricia completed her community service hours by working at a local food bank, which apparently she complained about constantly, but did finish on time. Her probation ended without incident a year after her sentencing. The criminal conviction remained on her record, a permanent reminder of the time she blocked a street with a tree and got arrested for it. The dental board's suspension also ended on schedule, but as I had heard, Patricia never really recovered professionally. The gap in her practice, combined with the ongoing internet immortality of her story, meant she couldn't return to the level of success she had enjoyed before. She worked at various clinics around Raleigh, never staying anywhere for more than a year or two, always seeming to have conflicts with management or coworkers about policies and procedures. Greg, on the other hand, apparently thrived after the move. Away from Patricia's constant drama and neighborhood politics, he became more social and relaxed. He joined a recreational basketball league, made new friends at work, and according to mutual acquaintances, seemed like a different person. Some people speculated that the whole incident had been a wake-up call for their marriage, forcing both of them to reevaluate their priorities and how they interacted with the world. Back on Willow Creek Drive, Robert Chen proved to be an excellent HOA president. He was reasonable, communicative, and focused on actual neighborhood issues rather than crusades against imaginary problems. Under his leadership, the HOA updated several outdated bylaws, organized successful community events, and generally made the neighborhood a more pleasant place to live. The story of Patricia and the tree became neighborhood legend, the kind of tale that got told to new residents as both a cautionary tale and entertainment. Let me tell you about the time our old HOA president got arrested, someone would say at a block party, and everyone would gather around to share their version of events. Sandra Martinez's newsletter article had been reprinted and passed around so many times that it existed in multiple versions with different embellishments. My favorite embellishment came from Tom Peterson's 10-year-old son, who told his friends at school that the tree had been 100 feet tall and weighed 1,000 pounds, and that Patricia had been dragged away screaming by 10 police officers. Kids have a way of making stories better, even when the truth is already pretty unbelievable. About a year and a half after everything happened, I was interviewed for a podcast about HOA disputes. The host had found my story through the viral news articles and wanted to include it in a series about neighborhood governance gone wrong. I agreed, and during the interview, I tried to be fair to Patricia while still being honest about what had happened. You think HOAs serve a useful purpose? The host asked me. Absolutely, I said. When they're run well, HOAs can maintain property values, organize community activities, and handle shared resources like pools and parks. The problem is when you get people in leadership positions who see the HOA as a way to control their neighbors rather than serve them. Patricia wasn't a bad person. She just got so fixated on this idea that my business was hurting the neighborhood that she couldn't see she was actually the one causing problems. You have any advice for people dealing with difficult HOA situations? Document everything, I said. Keep records of all communications. Take photos and videos if things get confrontational, and know your rights. I knew my business was legal and permitted, so when Patricia tried to shut it down, I had the facts on my side. Also, try to build relationships with your neighbors. When Patricia called that emergency meeting, I had people who spoke up for me because they knew I wasn't causing problems. That community support mattered. The podcast episode got decent traction, bringing another small wave of attention to the story. A few people reached out to share their own HOA horror stories, and I realized Patricia and I were far from unique. There were thousands of neighborhoods across America dealing with similar disputes, power-hungry board members, and conflicts over what should have been minor issues. But our story had the distinction of ending with an arrest, a viral news cycle, and a lost professional license, which put it in a special category of HOA disasters. Patricia had managed to take a simple disagreement about delivery trucks and turn it into a life-altering catastrophe for herself. As I sit here now, almost 2 years after that first morning when Derek called about Patricia blocking the street, I can look back on the whole thing with something approaching humor. It was absurd, it was stressful, and it was completely unnecessary, but it also taught me valuable lessons about standing up for myself, knowing my rights, and the importance of choosing your battles. Patricia chose the wrong battle. She took a minor annoyance and turned it into her hill to die on, and in the end, it cost her almost everything. Her reputation, her career, her home, and her position in the community all fell apart because she couldn't accept that sometimes you have to let things go. The maple tree still stands in the cul-de-sac, larger now after 2 years of growth. Its branches spread wide, providing shade in the summer and beautiful colors in the fall. Kids play around it, neighbors park near it, and delivery trucks pass by it without incident. Sometimes I think about taking a photo of it and sending it to Patricia, maybe with a caption like, "Thanks for the tree. It really did beautify the neighborhood." But that would be petty, and I'm trying to be better than that. She's dealing with the consequences of her actions every day. She doesn't need me rubbing salt in the wound. Elena thinks I should write a memoir about the experience. Bill thinks I should start a consulting business helping people deal with HOA disputes. Sandra Martinez thinks I should run for HOA president myself, though I have absolutely no interest in that level of neighborhood politics. Mostly, I just want to keep restoring furniture, spending time with my family, and living my life without drama. The Great Tree War taught me that sometimes the best victory is simply being able to go back to normal, to wake up each morning and not worry about whether someone's going to block your driveway or arrest you for running a legal business. My deliveries arrive at my commercial workshop now, 3 blocks off Main Street in a light industrial area that's perfect for my needs. The workshop is bigger than my garage ever was. I have room for more employees, and there's never any question about whether trucks can access the loading dock. It worked out better than if Patricia had just left me alone in the first place, which is perhaps the ultimate irony of the whole situation. Last week, I finished restoring an antique dining table for a client in Charleston. It was a beautiful piece, solid oak with intricate carvings, and it took me 3 weeks to strip the old finish, repair the damaged areas, and apply new stain and varnish. When I delivered it, the client was so happy she cried. She told me it had belonged to her grandmother, and having it restored made her feel connected to her family history. That's why I do this work. Not for the money, though that's nice, and not for the attention, which I could honestly do without. I do it because there's something meaningful about taking a broken, damaged thing and making it beautiful again. About preserving history and craftsmanship and giving old pieces new life. Patricia couldn't see that. All she saw was trucks on her street and a threat to her perfect vision of what the neighborhood should be. She couldn't see past her own need for control to recognize that maybe, just maybe, her neighbors had legitimate reasons for doing things she didn't personally approve of. I hope she's found some peace in Raleigh. I hope she's learned to let go a little bit, to accept that the world doesn't always conform to her expectations. I hope Greg is happy and that their marriage survived the stress of everything that happened. But mostly, I hope she drives past trees sometimes and remembers what happened when she decided to use one as a weapon in a neighborhood dispute. I hope she sees maple trees and thinks about the arrest, the conviction, the lost license, and the viral infamy. Not because I want her to suffer, but because I want her to remember that actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences are far bigger than you ever imagined. As for me, I'm good. My business is thriving, my family is happy, and my neighbors actually like me. The HOA is well run and reasonable. My delivery trucks go where they need to go without obstruction, and every time I drive past that maple tree in the cul-de-sac, I smile and think about how strange life can be. Sometimes the smallest conflicts spiral into the biggest disasters. Sometimes standing up for yourself means watching your opponent self-destruct through their own stubbornness. And sometimes, justice is served not through revenge or spite, but simply through the natural consequences of someone's own actions catching up with them. Patricia blocked my delivery truck route. The police arrested her. She lost her dental license, and all I did was try to run my business and live my life. The rest was entirely her doing, a perfect example of how destructive unchecked power and stubborn pride can be when combined with a position of authority and a complete inability to admit when you're wrong. The story ends not with a bang, but with a quiet sort of resolution. Patricia moved away. I moved on. The tree stayed, and Willow Creek Drive returned to being what it should have been all along, a peaceful neighborhood where people live their lives, mind their own business, and don't block traffic with landscaping features. It's been a long, strange journey from that first phone call from Derek to where I am now. But I made it through, my business survived and thrived, and I learned that sometimes the right thing to do is simply stand your ground and let unreasonable people defeat themselves through their own actions. And if anyone ever asks me about HOA disputes, I have one piece of advice. Don't block traffic with trees. It never ends well.